I got a strange call last night. I think my life is in danger. 3 a.m. There I was, laying in bed. Not sleeping, of course. Insomnia's a bitch, and there ain't much you can do about it. I've suffered from it, on and off, for my entire adult life. My teenage years as well, now that I think about it. One thing I've learned, laying there with your eyes closed in bed, it's not as restful as actual sleep, and it can be pretty boring, but it'll help a little with the exhaustion the next day. But trouble sleeping was the least of my concerns. That night, I got a phone call, which was more than a bit odd. Some of my friends are still out at this hour, but I don't usually get calls this late, or this early, take your pick. The number was unfamiliar, so I refused the call. Probably a misdial, I thought. A few moments later, it rang again, same number. I shook my head. Probably one of those so-called friends. Maybe they lost their phone, had to borrow another. I had no clue, but resigned, I picked up. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar. It was a woman's voice, and a particularly gentle one. With a distinct ring of urgency, she spoke, "Please, whatever you do, don't hang up. You don't know me, but I promise you, I only want to help." I was confused, but as I opened my mouth, I heard a gentle knock at my bedroom door. Fear immediately took hold. Somebody was in my apartment. I started to reach for the revolver in my bedside table, but the woman spoke again. "Don't answer the door. It can't get in if it's locked." Ignoring her, I grabbed my gun. As I stood up, she spoke again, louder, more urgently. "Don't unlock your door, please. I promise you, everything will be fine, but you absolutely mustn't let it in." The knock repeated, a bit louder this time, and I found myself hesitating. The woman on the phone breathed a sigh of relief, and my anxiety started to grow. I hadn't said anything yet, so why was she relieved? "I know it doesn't make any sense, and I know you don't have any reason to listen to me. But no matter what, I promise you that you will be okay if you just listen to my instructions." I finally responded to her and asked, "Who are you? What's going on?" Not the most creative line of questioning, but she answered, "I'm a friend. And you would never believe me, I'm sorry to say. Nobody ever does. But sometimes they listen. And when they do, they make it to the end. They survive. So please, please don't hang up, and whatever you do, don't unlock your door." As she spoke, she seemed on the verge of tears. Again, I opened my mouth to reply. This time, the knock on the door was booming, the sound of a fist slamming against the thin, hollow wood. I stepped back and lifted my gun, aiming for the door. I was sweating heavily, my heart pounding in my chest. The air felt thick, and I wanted nothing more than to pull the trigger. And then, all at once, it stopped. I wasn't afraid, or even anxious. The woman on the phone, a bit less tense, said, "It's gone for now. It will come back, and when it does, you must not open the door." I started to ask another question, but she interrupted me. "You left your front door unlocked. Go and lock it now, please." I stepped warily towards my bedroom door, and hesitated for a moment before unlocking it. My apartment seemed untouched. I knew I could not have imagined the slamming on my door, but not a single thing was out of place. My initial hypothesis, that it was some sort of psychotic burglar, started to feel less plausible. The front door, the woman reminded me. I put my gun down on the coffee table in the middle of the living room, still holding the phone in my left hand, and moved towards the door. As I reached for it, I suddenly heard footsteps, fast, loud, rushing and getting closer. The woman, for the first time, shouted, "Lock it. Hurry, even one will do." I heard a hand grab the handle on the other side of the door, just as I slid the bolt in place. Outside, something snarled and knocked gently on my front door. I turned the lock in the handle as well and took a step back. "You did it. You're fine. It can't get in now. Please, don't leave your apartment until morning." The woman hung up almost immediately after, and I was left, alone, to think about what I'd heard. I returned to my room. Collecting my revolver, I decided to leave it on my nightstand, rather than to put it back in the drawer, and incredibly, I fell asleep soon after. When I woke up, it was 11 a.m. my day off, fortunately, and I started to wonder if the events of the previous night were just a dream. But my revolver still sat on the bedside table. I went to make myself a cup of coffee, and nearly jumped a foot in the air when I heard a rapping on my front door. "Open up, police business," a gruff voice called, and I relaxed a little bit. I went over and, swallowing nervously, unlocked and opened my front door. 2 officers were standing in the doorway, and at least 6 more were out in the hall, questioning other neighbors. "What's going on here? Did something happen?" I asked, and the gruff officer replied, "Last night, there was a murder on your floor. We want to ask you a few questions." The questions were pretty standard, and I didn't want to make a suspect of myself, so I obliges. After the police left, I immediately locked my door again. I was, to say the least, terrified. I still am. I don't know what that was last night, but I know that if I hadn't listened to the woman on the phone, I would most likely be dead right now. It's nearly midnight. My front door is locked and bolted. Tomorrow, I might go out and buy a big-ass padlock, just to be sure, because as I'm typing this, somebody is knocking on my front door, and I don't want to take any chances.